Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to talk about a truly remarkable thinker, a philosopher who looked a bit like Santa Claus and had a mind that fizzed with curiosity. His name was Daniel Dennett, or Dan, as everyone knew him. He spent his life wrestling with some of the biggest questions you can imagine. What is consciousness? How did we, these thinking, feeling beings, come to exist? But what made Dan so special was his gift for making these giant ideas feel accessible, like something you could chat about over a cup of coffee. He was a philosopher, yes, but he was also a storyteller, a scientist at heart, and a guide who wanted to help all of us understand the incredible story of our own minds. So, let's take a journey into the life and mind of this brilliant man. Dan's story begins in a place you might not expect for a quintessential American philosopher, Beirut, Lebanon. He was born there in 1942. His father was a historian and a diplomat, which meant Dan's early life was filled with travel and a sense of the wider world. He spent time in places that were ancient and rich with history, which perhaps sparked his early fascination with big, complex systems. But tragedy struck when he was just 5 years old. His father died in a plane crash. Soon after, his mother moved the family back to Massachusetts. Growing up, Dan was a kid who was always taking things apart to see how they worked. He was fascinated by mechanisms, by the intricate dance of cause and effect. This wasn't just a hobby, it was a clue to the kind of thinker he would become. He wanted to understand not just clocks and radios, but the most complex machine of all, the human brain. His academic path was nothing short of stellar. He went to Phillips Exeter Academy and then on to Harvard University, where he initially planned to study something else but quickly fell in love with philosophy. He was drawn to the big questions. After graduating from Harvard, he crossed the Atlantic to study at the University of Oxford, a place steeped in philosophical tradition. This was a pivotal time. At Oxford, he studied under the great philosopher Gilbert Ryle, who famously challenged the idea of the ghost in the machine, the notion that our mind is some mysterious, separate entity floating inside our physical body. Ryle's ideas deeply influenced Dan, setting him on a path to find a more scientific, grounded explanation for consciousness. He wasn't looking for a ghost, he was looking for the machinery. After finishing his doctorate at Oxford, Dan returned to the United States. He taught for a few years at the University of California, Irvine, before finding his long-term academic home in 1971 at Tufts University, just outside Boston. And when I say long-term, I mean it. Dan spent over 50 years at Tufts. It wasn't just a job, it was his community, his intellectual playground. He became the co-director of the Center for Cognitive Studies, a place where people from different fields, philosophy, computer science, neuroscience, psychology, could all come together to try and figure out the mind. He was a beloved teacher, known for his enthusiasm and his ability to make complex subjects exciting for his students. He didn't just lecture, he engaged, he challenged, and he inspired. When he wasn't in the classroom, you might find him on his sailboat, Philo, navigating the waters off the coast of Maine. He loved sailing, the feeling of harnessing natural forces, wind and water, to move forward. It was a fitting metaphor for his philosophical approach, understanding the natural processes that give rise to something as amazing as the human mind. So, what were Dan Dennett's big ideas? Let's try to break them down. At the core of his work was the puzzle of consciousness. How does the wetware of our brain, that 3-pound lump of neurons and chemicals, create the software of our thoughts, feelings, and sense of self? Dennett's answer was bold and, for some, controversial. He argued that consciousness isn't one single, magical thing happening in a specific center of the brain. There's no little person, or homunculus, sitting inside your head watching a movie of your life. Instead, he proposed what he called the multiple drafts model. Imagine your brain as a busy newsroom, with reporters all over the place constantly writing and rewriting stories based on incoming information from your senses. Consciousness, he argued, is like the dominant story that emerges from this chaotic process at any given moment. There's no final, published edition. It's a continuous, flowing stream of updated drafts. This means our sense of a single, unified self is, in a way, a clever user illusion, a useful simplification our brain creates to help us navigate the world. He was also a passionate champion of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. For Dennett, Darwin's idea wasn't just about biology. He called it the single best idea anyone has ever had. Why? Because it showed how incredible complexity could arise from simple, mindless, algorithmic processes over vast periods of time. Nature, without any grand designer, could produce something as intricate as the human eye or the human brain. Dennett saw this as a universal acid, an idea so powerful it could eat through traditional beliefs about design and purpose, not just in biology, but in cosmology, morality, and even technology. He believed that the same principles of evolution could help explain the development of our minds and our cultures. Ideas themselves, or memes as Richard Dawkins called them, compete and evolve in the ecosystem of human minds. These powerful ideas found their way into his many books, which were written not just for other philosophers but for anyone with a curious mind. His 1991 book, Consciousness Explained, was a landmark. The title itself was audacious, and some critics joked it should have been called Consciousness Explained Away. But that misses the point. Dennett wasn't trying to deny that we have rich, subjective experiences. He was trying to explain how those experiences are generated by the physical processes of the brain, without resorting to mystery. Another one of his most famous books is Darwin's Dangerous Idea. This is where he really dives deep into the power of evolution as a thinking tool. He passionately argues that we shouldn't be afraid of where science leads us, even if it challenges long-held beliefs. He saw beauty and wonder in the naturalistic, evolutionary story of our existence. He wanted us to see that we are not diminished by being a product of nature. We are made all the more extraordinary by it. Beyond his books and his teaching, Dan was a prominent public intellectual. He was famously one of the four horsemen of New Atheism, along with Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and the late Christopher Hitchens. They were known for their strong defense of science and reason and their criticism of religion. Dennett's approach, however, was often more that of a curious scientist than a fiery debater. He was genuinely interested in the phenomenon of belief itself. He even wrote a book called Breaking the Spell, where he argued that religion should be studied scientifically, just like any other natural human phenomenon. His goal wasn't just to criticize, but to understand. This passion for clear, rational thinking was the thread that connected all of his work. He believed that philosophy wasn't just an abstract academic game. It was a set of tools for thinking better about everything, from science to ethics to our own daily lives. So what is Dan Dennett's legacy? He passed away in April 2024, leaving behind a world of ideas that will continue to be debated and explored for generations. He was a bridge builder, connecting the often separate worlds of philosophy and science. He showed that philosophers could and should engage deeply with the findings of neuroscience, biology, and artificial intelligence. He insisted that if you want to talk about the mind, you have to understand the brain. But perhaps his greatest legacy is the spirit of curiosity and intellectual joy he embodied. He was described by his students and colleagues as incredibly warm, generous, and encouraging. He wasn't an ivory tower philosopher who looked down on others. He was a partner in discovery. He made people feel that they, too, could take part in solving the great puzzles of existence. Daniel Dennett taught us that the universe, and our own minds within it, are far more interesting and wonderful when we look at them with the clear eyes of science and reason. He showed us that the quest for knowledge is one of the most exciting adventures we can embark on. Thank you so much for joining me on this look into the life of a truly brilliant thinker. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and consider subscribing for more stories about the people and ideas that shape our world. See you next time.